Okay, let's unpack this. In a world increasingly dependent on all things digital, I mean, from how we run businesses to how nations function, there's a vital, often overlooked question. How do we not just survive, but truly thrive when cyber threats are, well, constant, sophisticated, and always evolving? Today, we're taking a deep dive into a foundational document that tackles exactly that, the Cyber Resiliency Engineering Framework by Deborah J. Bodeau and Richard Grobart from IDRE.
Right.
And this isn't just about cybersecurity. It's about engineering for relentless resilience, understanding that the battlefield, it's always shifting.
What's truly fascinating here, and what we'll explore in depth, is how this framework provides a structured, almost architectural way to think about building systems. Systems that can anticipate, withstand, recover from, and even evolve in the face of cyber attacks.
Evolve, yeah.
For you, our curious listener, this deep dive will provide a clear roadmap walking you through what cyber resiliency engineering truly means, why it's a distinct and necessary discipline, and how its principles impact everything from individual systems right up to national critical infrastructure.
Right.
We're here to act as your guides, basically, helping you extract the most important nuggets of knowledge.
Our mission today is to walk you through this seminal document like a pair of expert instructors, breaking down each core concept one by one in the original sequence.
Step by step.
Exactly. Our goal is to ensure you gain a comprehensive, actionable understanding without getting overwhelmed, highlighting those, surprising facts and moments along the way. Let's get started.
Okay.
Let's begin at the very beginning. Why is cyber resiliency engineering even necessary in the first place? The document opens by highlighting our ever-growing dependence on cyberspace. Everything from the daily operations of businesses to the complex functions of critical national infrastructure. It's no longer just about preventing attacks, is it? It feels like something more profound.
You're absolutely right. The crucial takeaway here is that while resilience might sometimes appear to be an emergent property, something that just happens organically,
Yeah, like it just pops up.
Exactly. But the kind of resilience needed to combat today's persistent, stealthy, and sophisticated cyber attacks must be deliberately engineered.
Oh, okay.
Engineered.
This isn't an accidental outcome. It's a subdiscipline of mission assurance engineering. Mission assurance, at its core, focuses on ensuring that an organization's critical operations can continue even when faced with advanced threats.
Right, keeping the mission going.
Precisely. Cyber resiliency engineering then zeroes in on how specific resilience practices are applied within this context and, vitally, the trade-offs involved when making those engineering decisions.
Trade-offs, yeah. That's always key. You can't simply hope for resilience. You have to design and build it in, layer by layer, with intent.
So if we're building it layer by layer, what exactly does this framework identify as its core building blocks right out of the gate? What are those fundamental components that define this discipline?
Okay. The document lays out 4 essential elements that serve as the foundational pillars for cyber resiliency engineering. First, and perhaps most central, are cyber resiliency goals, objectives, and practices.
Goals, objectives, practices.
Got it. These elements establish a clear hierarchy, defining the high-level what we're striving for, the measurable how we assess progress, and the concrete actions we take to achieve resilience. They provide the actionable roadmap.
Makes sense.
Second, the framework highlights the paramount importance of the threat model. This is absolutely critical because, as instructors, we know you can't effectively build defenses or resilience strategies if you don't deeply understand who your adversaries are, what their behaviors look like, and what they are trying to accomplish.
Know your enemy.
Basically, yeah. It's about truly knowing your enemy's capabilities and intentions.
And it sounds like this isn't just a generic cyber threat, but something quite specific and advanced, something that requires a different approach.
Exactly. We'll delve into the specifics of that advanced threat model later, but for now, understand it's a focus on persistent, sophisticated actors.
Okay.
Third, the framework identifies the architectural layers or domains where these practices can actually be applied. Resilience isn't just a theoretical concept. It has to be implemented somewhere concrete.
Right, where the rubber meets the road.
Exactly. From the overarching organizational governance down to individual software components and network segments, this really underscores the practical, hands-on application of the framework. And finally, the 4th element is aspects of cost. Building robust resilience isn't free, and the framework transparently acknowledges the financial and resource implications of implementing these strategies, emphasizing that a thorough cost-benefit and trade-off analysis is absolutely essential for effective decision-making.
Can't forget the cost.
You need to understand the true investment.
That makes perfect sense. And who stands to benefit from this framework? Who are the diverse stakeholders who need to make these decisions? Because it feels like this goes far beyond just the technical security teams.
It absolutely does. This framework is designed to support a wide spectrum of stakeholders, recognizing that cyber resiliency is a collective responsibility across an enterprise.
Right.
At the strategic level, you have mission commanders or business function heads. Their primary concern is knowing, fundamentally, if their core operations can perform and deliver on their objectives, even under duress. They need assurance.
Yeah, can we still do our job?
Exactly. Then there are the cyber defenders, the frontline staff and security operations centers. They are working daily in a dynamic environment and need actionable guidance to achieve these resiliency goals in real time. They are the ones in the trenches, so to speak.
So the operational teams, making sure it works day to day.
Precisely. We also have ITCT providers and operators, those managing computing resources or shared services. They're responsible for ensuring adequate cyber resiliency in the offerings they provide to the rest of the organization. And importantly, program managers, informed by systems engineers, are crucial. They're the ones making crucial cost-benefit trade-offs for investments in cyber resiliency, balancing protection with operational capability and resource allocation.
They hold the purse strings, in a way.
In many cases, yeah.
And the architects and engineers, of course, who are building these systems.
Yes, the architects and systems engineers, they're the ones determining which practices to apply, where in the system, how to implement them technically, and when in the development lifecycle.
Okay.
Finally, test and exercise planners are vital. They leverage this framework to represent threats realistically in their drills and simulations, ensuring that the resilience strategies are actually effective and ready for real-world scenarios.
Testing it out.
It really is a comprehensive view of all the players involved, emphasizing that everyone has a role.
That's a remarkably broad church of stakeholders. And the document stresses that this framework isn't static. It's intended to evolve. Why is that specific emphasis on evolution so important for a framework dealing with cyber threats?
This leads us to a fundamental understanding. In a rapidly changing cyber landscape, where adversary tactics and technological environments are constantly shifting, a static framework would quickly become obsolete.
Right. Useless pretty fast.
Exactly. This framework is explicitly designed as a living document, intended to mature as the discipline of cyber resiliency engineering itself evolves through new research, practical experience, and lessons learned from real-world incidents. This adaptability is absolutely crucial.
Makes sense.
It provides a structured way to facilitate discussions and analysis of goals, practices, and costs among these disparate stakeholders, ensuring everyone is working from a common, updated understanding.
On the same page.
Yes. And perhaps most importantly, it informs how cyber resiliency metrics are developed. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it, and you certainly can't improve it. The framework helps you define what to measure to truly gauge effectiveness.
Right. Metrics are key. Okay, let's zoom out a bit. The document makes it clear that resilience isn't a new concept. It's been applied in many fields for decades, but its specific application to cyberspace is. What do we mean by resilience in general, and how has it been applied to different domains before cyber?
Resilience, at its core, is the ability to bounce back from an adverse event. It's about a system, an organization, or even a nation's capacity to absorb shocks, minimize disruption, and return to or even improve upon its previous functional state.
Bound it back. Okay.
But as Table 1 in the document strikingly illustrates, its definition and focus vary widely depending on the scope. For a nation, for instance, it's about adapting to changing conditions and rapidly recovering from large-scale disruptions, whether that's a natural disaster or a widespread cyber attack on critical infrastructure.
Big picture stuff.
Yeah. For critical infrastructure specifically, the focus shifts to reducing the magnitude and duration of disruptive events, ensuring essential services remain available.
So different levels of focus mean different nuances in the definition?
Exactly. For an individual system, it might be about maintaining essential capabilities even in a degraded state, sometimes even operating as intended despite being compromised.
Even when hit.
Right. The common thread across these diverse definitions, regardless of scope, is a recurring set of actions or phases. Preparing, preventing, absorbing, withstanding, recovering, and adapting.
The whole cycle.
These aren't just one-time events, they're continuous processes. This framework builds on those established resilience engineering concepts, but tailors them specifically for the unique challenges of cyberspace, especially when facing sophisticated, persistent threats that are not simply singular, bounded incidents, but rather ongoing campaigns.
Ah, okay, campaigns, not just single shots.
Exactly.
And the document notes a subtle distinction between resilience and resiliency.
Yeah.
Why does that specific word choice matter here? It seems small.
It's a small but very deliberate choice by the authors. The term resiliency is used to help differentiate this emerging discipline of cyber resiliency engineering from the broader, more established discipline of general resilience engineering.
Okay, so it signals something specific.
It's a way of signaling that while it certainly builds on those general principles, its specific focus is on building systems and processes to counter cyber threats. This nuance helps to clarify its unique identity within the broader engineering landscape.
Got it.
Furthermore, unlike a simple adverse event like a power outage, cyber threats are often part of a long-term adaptive campaign by a determined adversary, not just a single isolated incident.
Right, back to the campaign idea.
Which means the ability to continuously adapt and evolve is even more critical for cyber resiliency.
Okay, that makes sense. Here's where it really gets interesting, I think. The document emphasizes that defining resilience goals absolutely requires a clear, well-defined threat model. What kinds of characteristics do adversaries have, according to this framework, and how does it help us understand their approach?
Good question. Adversaries are primarily characterized by their capabilities, intent, and targeting.
Capabilities, intent, targeting.
Capabilities refer to what they can do, their technical skills, available tools, the resources they command. Intent is why they're acting their motivations, whether it's financial gain, espionage, disruption, their ultimate objectives. And targeting is who or what they're going after.
Okay.
But beyond these static characteristics, the document uses a really powerful concept to describe their behavior in action, the cyber kill chain.
Ah, the kill chain. Heard that one.
It's a widely adopted model originally developed by Lockheed Martin that helps us break down a complex, stealthy, and persistent attack into a series of distinct, observable steps. It's a critical tool for understanding the attacker's mindset and, crucially, identifying specific opportunities for defense and resilience throughout their entire campaign.
So it maps out their attack path.
Essentially, yes. The cyber kill chain, it certainly sounds dramatic. Can you break down its components for us, giving us a clearer picture of how an adversary operates?
Absolutely. It's a foundational concept for anyone looking to understand modern cyber warfare. The first step is reconnaissance.
Recon.
This is where the adversary gathers information about their target to plan their attack. Think of it like a burglar casing a house before a break-in. They're looking for vulnerabilities, open doors, weak security practices, maybe even just public information about the target.
Checking things out.
Right. Could involve passive scanning, social media recon, active network probing. Next, we have weaponization. Here, the adversary creates their weapon packaging malware into a delivery vehicle.
Building the bomb, so to speak.
Kind of. Might be a carefully crafted malicious link in a phishing email, malware hidden in a doc attachment, or a compromised app. It's crafting the tool for the attack.
Then comes delivery. Sending that weapon to the potential victim. Could be a phishing email, a drive-by download from a tainted website, or even something physical like a USB drive left in a parking lot.
The drop-off.
Exactly. The fourth step, exploitation installation, is identified as the pivotal point in the kill chain.
The breach.
Pretty much. This is where the adversary exploits system vulnerabilities to install their malware, gaining a critical foothold within the target's network. Often the first moment they get unauthorized access or control.
Okay, they're in.
Once installed, they move to command and control, C2. At this stage, the adversary establishes a remote channel to direct the compromised system, often anonymously.
Calling home.
Yeah. This could involve downloading more malicious tools, sending out sensitive data, or propagating the malware to other systems within your network. It's the remote control over your assets, allowing them to issue commands. Following that are the actions to achieve adversary objectives. This is the so what moment, the actual impact they're aiming for. Right. Could be stealing sensitive data, known as data exfiltration, corrupting vital information, encrypting files for ransomware, or degrading services to disrupt operations. This is the payoff for the attacker.
Yeah.
Finally, there's maintenance. In this stage, the adversary takes steps to ensure persistent future access and to avoid detection.
Dicking around.
Yes. Might involve changing their malware profiles to evade antivirus, modifying system logs to hide their tracks, or creating backdoors for continued access. This emphasizes the persistent nature of these threats they want to stay in your system for as long as possible.
So it's a full life cycle of an attack, not just a single isolated event. Wow. That makes building resilience against it a much bigger challenge, because you're not just trying to stop the initial breach, but about surviving and adapting throughout the entire campaign.
Exactly. And as cyber threats evolve, so too do the ways we characterize cyber resiliency. The document briefly mentions how concepts from fields like health and ecology have been applied to cyberspace, underscoring this evolving understanding.
Ecology, how does that apply?
Well, in ecology, resilience is about an ecosystem's ability to absorb disturbance and reorganize while undergoing change so as to still retain its essential function. Applying this to cyberspace means thinking about dynamic, adaptive systems that can shift and recover rather than just static, unyielding defenses.
Like a forest recovering from a fire.
Sort of, yeah. It highlights how different research communities like the Department of Defense, DoD, DARPA, and MITRE itself characterize cyber resiliency, each adding a unique layer to our understanding based on their specific missions and challenges.
Can you give us some quick examples of what those different research community characterizations emphasize? What different lenses do they bring?
Certainly. For instance, the DoD Cyber S&T Priority Steering Council often emphasizes building resilient infrastructures that can withstand cyber attacks and sustain or recover critical functions. Their focus includes mechanisms to compose resilient systems from inherently brittle components or integrating sensing, detection, response, and recovery into one effort.
Building strong foundations.
Yes. Right. DARPA, on the other hand, might talk about cyber mission resilience supported by resilient clouds technology, focusing on mission-aware networking, optimizing resource allocation, innate distributed defense mechanisms, sometimes using evocative terms like crash technologies, to describe capabilities for innate and adaptive immunity in systems.
Innate immunity, interesting.
Yeah. IBPure itself, as the author of this framework, has previously characterized cyber resiliency as enabling structured cyber assets to tolerate some component compromises while maintaining functionality.
Great.
The key insight here is that each organization, shaped by its specific mission and challenges, brings a slightly different but complementary lens to defining and achieving cyber resiliency, contributing to a rich and dynamic area of study.
So everyone adds a piece to the puzzle.
Exactly. This diversity of thought strengthens the overall field.
This is a really important distinction the document makes. It explicitly differentiates cyber resiliency from general cybersecurity. What's the core difference, and why isn't cybersecurity enough on its own in today's threat landscape?
This is perhaps one of the most fundamental shifts in thinking this framework introduces. Traditional cybersecurity, while absolutely vital, primarily focuses on protection and defense.
Building walls.
Yeah, its goals are to prevent unauthorized access, prevent attacks from happening in the first place, or reduce system vulnerabilities. It's about building strong walls and locking doors a necessary first line of defense.
Sure.
However, in the face of sophisticated and persistent adversaries, the reality is that perfect prevention is often impossible. Defenses can be breached.
Assume breach.
That's the mindset shift. Cyber resiliency, on the other hand, assumes that breaches will occur and focuses on the ability to continue functioning despite successful attacks or adverse conditions.
Keep operating.
It's about fighting through the attack, maintaining essential operations even while under compromise, rather than simply trying to avoid the attack altogether. It's a move from a purely preventative mindset to one that embraces operational continuity in a contested environment.
So, cyber resiliency can be viewed as integral to broader disciplines like computer network defense, CND, or even comprehensive cyber operations. Can you give us an example that really illustrates this blend?
Certainly. The document highlights the Department of Defense's Assistant Secretary for Cyber, Identity, and Information Assurance, often abbreviated as ASD-CIA.
Okay.
This office has two primary computer network defense goals. One is to anticipate and prevent successful attacks, which perfectly aligns with traditional cybersecurity efforts.
Cybersecurity.
Right. But the second, and critically important for our discussion, is to prepare for and operate through cyber degradation or attack. This latter goal is precisely where cyber resiliency shines.
Operate through, that's the key phrase.
Exactly. It's about ensuring mission continuity and operational effectiveness even when systems are compromised or under duress. Another excellent example is the Booz-Allen-Hamilton maturity model for cyber operations, which identifies 4 critical functions: anticipation, awareness, action, and after-action.
Anticipation, awareness, action, after action.
These functions explicitly go beyond mere prevention to include sustained operation during an attack and rigorous learning from incidents. This holistic approach actively incorporates resilience principles into their operational model.
Learning from it.
Right. This underscores that cyber resiliency is not just an add-on, but represents a fundamental shift in how we approach security in a complex, contested digital environment where compromise is an accepted, if undesirable, reality.
Okay, accepting that reality is tough but necessary. Given all these evolving characterizations and the subtle distinctions, the document then provides very specific working definitions for key terms. Why is it so crucial to define these terms so precisely when building a comprehensive framework like this?
It's about eliminating ambiguity and ensuring everyone involved, from strategists to engineers to operators, is literally speaking the same language.
Common vocabulary.
Exactly. Without clear shared definitions, discussions can quickly become unproductive, and different teams might unknowingly work towards different understandings of resilience, leading to misaligned efforts and wasted resources.
Right, talking past each other.
Precisely. The definitions provided in this framework are designed to be broad enough to cover the entire problem domain, consistent with existing terminology where possible, and specifically tailored for environments like national security or critical infrastructure. They serve as the common vocabulary. Let's look at the foundational definitions. First, cyberspace.
Okay, cyberspace.
It's defined as the collection of ICT infrastructures, applications, and devices on which the organization, enterprise, or mission depends, typically including the internet, telecommunications networks, computer systems, personal devices, and, when networked with other ICT, embedded sensors, processors, and controllers.
So everything digital it depends on.
Pretty much. It's broad and encompassing, including the entire digital ecosystem an entity relies upon, even networked physical security systems or industrial control systems. Second, cyber resources.
What are those?
These are separately manageable resources in cyberspace, including information in electronic form, as well as information systems, systems of systems, infrastructures, shared services, and devices. Separately manageable.
Okay. This definition is crucial because it emphasizes that information itself is a resource to be protected, not just the hardware and software that process it. The key here is separately manageable, meaning elements that can be individually controlled, secured, or acted upon.
Got it.
Third, a cyber attack.
Define that.
It's defined as an attack on cyber resources. The attack is typically, but not necessarily, carried out by cyber means. The attack may be intended to adversely affect the cyber resources or to adversely affect the missions, business functions, organizations, or populations that depend on those resources.
So the attack doesn't have to be purely digital.
Right. An insider physically inserting malware accounts, and the target can be the cyber resources themselves or the real-world functions that depend on them, linking back to that mission-centric view.
Interesting. And now, the star of our show, the working definition of cyber resiliency itself. How does the framework precisely articulate this core concept? Here it is, in full. The ability of a nation, organization, or mission or business process to anticipate, withstand, recover from, and evolve to improve capabilities in the face of adverse conditions, stresses, or attacks on the supporting cyber resources it needs to function.
Anticipate, withstand, recover, evolve. The 4 pillars again.
Exactly. What's particularly powerful and insightful about this definition is that it deliberately accommodates 2 complementary interpretations. It's about the resilience of the cyber resources themselves, their technical robustness and ability to operate through issues.
The tech side.
Right. But equally, it's about the resilience of the mission or organization that depends on those resources.
The operational side.
Yes. This highlights both the technical and operational aspects, recognizing that ultimately we're trying to protect the mission, not just the machines. It also broadens the scope of adverse conditions beyond just direct attacks to include things like reconnaissance or even natural disasters, which adversaries might exploit.
Okay, so it's very comprehensive. And this comprehensive definition of cyber resiliency directly leads us to the definition of cyber resiliency engineering, doesn't it? That's where the how comes in.
Yes, it does. It's defined as the subdiscipline of mission assurance engineering, which considers 1. The ways in which an evolving set of resilience practices can be applied to improve cyber resiliency, and 2. The trade-offs associated with different strategies for applying those practices.
Trade-offs again.
Always. This definition is critical because it means cyber resiliency engineering encompasses not just architectural definition and systems engineering for building resilient systems, but also process engineering to integrate resilience into ongoing operations.
So building it and running it.
Right. It's about how you do cyber resiliency, moving beyond theory into practical application and strategic decision-making.
So it can be used to define resilient architectures, integrate resilience into systems, and even improve operational resilience. It truly covers the entire life cycle, from the initial design phase all the way through to ongoing operations and continuous improvement. Fascinating.
Absolutely.
Now that we have a solid handle on the core definitions, let's understand where cyber resiliency engineering fits in the broader landscape of engineering disciplines. The document provides a helpful visual in Figure 1 showing its context and interconnections. This isn't a standalone field, is it?
Indeed, it's not. Cyber resiliency engineering is deeply interconnected with, informed by, builds upon, and extends other critical areas. Think of it as a specialized branch drawing strength from robust established roots.
Okay, what are those roots?
These roots are resilience engineering, which is the general foundation for dealing with adverse events, information systems security engineering, ISC, which focuses on protecting information assets from a security perspective, and mission assurance engineering, MAE, which is the overarching strategic goal of ensuring that critical functions can continue despite threats.
Resilience engineering, I, and MAE.
Right. This interconnection is vital for a holistic approach, ensuring that cyber resiliency is not an isolated effort, but a fully integrated component of an organization's overall strategy for survival and success.
Okay, let's break those down. Let's start with resilience engineering. Is cyber resiliency engineering simply a specialized form of that, or is there more to it?
You could certainly characterize it as resilience engineering focused specifically on cyber threats, but with unique adaptations. It draws heavily from concepts developed by resilience engineers, adapting them for the distinct challenges of the digital realm.
Okay.
For example, the document references Madney, who defines 4 core aspects of general resilience that directly map and are deeply relevant to the cyber domain. First, avoid, which translates to anticipation in the cyber context.
Avoid equals anticipate.
Yes, this means proactively identifying and removing challenges or vulnerabilities before they can be exploited to cause harm. In cyber, this could involve patching known vulnerabilities before an adversary can exploit them, or implementing secure coding practices.
Being proactive.
Second, withstand, also known as absorption. This is about maintaining functionality despite disruptions. In the cyber context, it's about systems continuing to operate even when under attack, perhaps in a degraded but still functional state. It's the ability to absorb the hit and keep going.
Taking the punch.
Kind of. Third, recover from, or restoration. This is about getting back to an operational state as quickly and completely as possible after an incident. This isn't just about restoring data from a backup, but restoring mission functionality so that the organization can resume its core purpose.
Getting back up.
Right. And fourth, adapt to or reconfiguration. This is about learning from past events and changing processes or systems based on those lessons or predicted future threats. It's about evolving to be better prepared next time, a continuous cycle of improvement.
Learning and changing.
Exactly. The framework also acknowledges that disruptions can stem from various sources: natural or man-made, external or systemic, single agent or multi-agent, short-lived or enduring.
Lots of possibilities.
For cyber, the prudent approach, especially given the framework's focus, suggests assuming man-made, external, multiple agents and enduring disruption, a much tougher scenario than a simple one-off event.
Assuming the worst case, basically.
In many ways, yes. This means cyber resiliency must be inherently robust and adaptable over extended periods, reflecting the persistent nature of advanced cyber threats.
So if general resilience engineering provides the philosophical foundation, where does information systems security engineering fit in? We know ICE is about protecting information and systems.
ISACA is absolutely crucial. It's not just a prerequisite, but the bedrock upon which cyber resiliency engineering is built.
It's the foundation.
Yes, it applies engineering principles throughout the system lifecycle to achieve the core information security goals of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Think of it as the fundamental hygiene and protective measures: building strong walls, locking doors, installing alarms.
The basics, CIA.
Right. The document highlights several key IS principles that are specific to resilience and directly support it, even if they aren't explicitly labeled as resilience practices. These include implementing layered security to avoid single points of vulnerability.
Defense in depth.
Exactly. Designing systems to limit damage and be resilient, consciously building in the ability to survive a hit. Providing assurance that systems remain resilient against threats through ongoing verification. Limiting or containing vulnerabilities, actively reducing the attack surface.
Makes sense.
Isolating public access systems from critical resources, creating segmented zones, using boundary mechanisms to separate systems and networks, implementing audit mechanisms to detect unauthorized use, and critically, developing and exercising contingency plans for availability and response.
All good security practices. But the document says cyber resiliency engineering differs from IS in its threat model. How significant is this difference, and what does it mean for how we approach defenses?
This is a really important distinction that reshapes our perspective. While ICE considers general threats and vulnerabilities, cyber resiliency engineering specifically focuses on persistent, stealthy, and sophisticated adversaries whose primary aim is to undermine mission functions.
The advanced actors again.
Yes. These aren't just common cyber criminals. They're often well-funded, patient, highly skilled actors, potentially nation-states or organized crime groups, with deep strategic objectives. They can exploit natural disasters or even deliberately make their actions look like user errors to evade detection, so the threat model is far more nuanced and ongoing.
Freaky.
Very. Furthermore, cyber resiliency goes beyond just availability, which ICE focuses on heavily. It explicitly includes ensuring integrity, that data hasn't been tampered with, actively reconstructing mission functionality, not just getting the system back online, but restoring the ability to do the job, and critically, evolving to counter new and unseen threats.
So availability, integrity, and evolution.
Right. It's a much more dynamic and adaptive approach that assumes an advanced, living adversary.
So it's not a replacement for ICE, but a necessary evolution that builds on it.
Exactly. Cyber resiliency engineering assumes that sound IS is performed as a baseline. It's like building a high-tech reinforced safe. You still need to lock the door and have basic security features.
Can't skip the basics.
No. Without appropriate foundational security controls, many advanced cyber resiliency practices can simply be bypassed, rendering them ineffective. They work hand in hand, with ISA providing the strong foundational protection upon which cyber resiliency engineering layers its advanced adaptive capabilities designed for the most challenging threats.
Okay, they work together. And finally, we arrive at mission assurance engineering, MAE. This seems to be the ultimate overarching goal, doesn't it? The reason we're doing all of this.
You're absolutely right. MAE is defined as enterprise systems engineering to provide mission assurance in the presence of advanced threats. It's the strategic umbrella under which cyber resiliency engineering operates, providing the ultimate context and purpose.
The big picture goal.
Yes. As Figure 2 illustrates in the document, MAE extends existing practices to directly focus on the Advanced Persistent Threat, APT, ensuring that the organization can continue to achieve its objectives even when facing highly capable, patient, and dedicated adversaries. It's about guaranteeing mission success regardless of the challenges.
What are the key subdisciplines that fall under MAE, all contributing to this overarching goal?
MAE encompasses several critical subdisciplines that collectively contribute to this overarching goal. These include, first, cyber-aware enterprise transformation strategies.
Transforming the whole organization.
Basically, yes. Adapting the entire organization, its processes, people, technology, to be inherently more secure and resilient against cyber threats. It's a top-down strategic shift.
Okay.
Second, cyber resiliency engineering itself, which is what we're deep diving into today. This is the specific focus on building resilience into cyber resources and processes.
Our main topic.
Third, system acquisition mission assurance engineering. This ensures that resilience is built into individual systems and acquired technologies right from the very beginning of their life cycle.
Building it in from the start.
Exactly. Making sure new additions don't inadvertently introduce new vulnerabilities or reduce overall mission assurance. And, as we just discussed, information systems security engineering, IC, providing the foundational security controls.
Right.
The crucial insight here is that while cyber resiliency practices can certainly be applied to individual systems, the analysis of their effectiveness and the necessary trade-offs must ultimately be performed at the mission business function tier.
Ah, okay. Focus on the mission outcome.
Yes. This means we're not just asking if a server is resilient, but if the mission that server supports the critical business process or national security function can succeed. This ensures that the focus remains squarely on the mission's ability to succeed, not just the isolated technical components, providing a holistic and mission-centric view of security.
So MAE informs, and is informed by, an organization's investment and risk management strategies. It really ties everything together, from the technical details to the strategic budget decisions.
Precisely. It's a continuous feedback loop. Organizational culture, strategic mission priorities, enterprise-wide risk tolerance all feed into MAE decisions. In turn, MAE informs how an organization should invest its resources in security and how it should manage its risks, especially concerning advanced cyber threats.
Making it strategic.
It ensures that every investment in cyber resiliency is directly tied back to enabling the core mission, making it a strategic asset rather than just an IT expenditure.
All right, we've set the stage, defined our terms, understood the broader context. Now let's dive into the four major components of the cyber resiliency engineering framework itself. As Figure 3 visually depicts, it's elegantly informed by resilience engineering, cybersecurity, and mission assurance engineering. This is where we see all those influences come together.
Yes, each component brings unique insights and functions as a critical part of a cohesive whole. The overarching goals come from general resilience engineering, giving us the big picture objectives.
Goals from resilience engineering.
The specific focus on sophisticated threats is clearly derived from robust cybersecurity principles, sharpening our understanding of who and what we're protecting against.
Threat focus from cybersecurity.
And the mission orientation embedded in the definitions of goals and objectives is drawn directly from mission assurance engineering, ensuring our efforts are always aligned with critical organizational function.
Mission focus from MAE.
Okay. This holistic approach, integrating these three distinct but deeply related disciplines, is what truly makes the framework powerful and actionable.
Let's start with what the framework identifies as the core elements of cyber resiliency. The goals, objectives, and practices. How are these structured in this framework, and why is that particular hierarchy so important for engineers and decision makers?
They form a clear, logical hierarchy, acting as an informal ontology to aid understanding and provide a coherent roadmap for implementation. At the highest level, you have goals.
High-level aims.
Right. Broad statements of the intended outcomes. Think of them as your strategic aims, your ultimate destination. Below that are objectives.
More specific targets.
Yes, more specific, measurable statements that facilitate assessment and progress tracking. An objective typically supports one or more goals and provides a clearer, more tangible target for action.
Measurable, important.
And at the most granular level, you have practices. These are the concrete, actionable ways, the specific techniques, methods, procedures used to achieve objectives. They are applied directly to the architecture or design of mission functions and their supporting cyber resources.
How-to.
Exactly. These practices are truly the how-to guide for implementing resilience on the ground. This structure ensures that every technical action can be traced back to a strategic objective.
The document lists 4 goals, 8 objectives, and 14 practices. And importantly, it highlights that they don't stand in isolation, do they? It's not just a checklist.
No, absolutely not. They're deeply interdependent, forming a complex, dynamic web where strength in one area can significantly bolster another.
Connected.
Right. For instance, unpredictability. A practice of making frequent, random changes to systems can be absolutely critical for effective deception. Another practice aimed at confusing an adversary. One helps the other.
This interconnectedness is a key insight for comprehensive cyber resiliency. You can't just pick and choose 1 or 2 practices in isolation. A truly robust posture requires understanding how they synergize, how they rely on each other, and how they contribute collectively to multiple objectives.
Holistic view again.
Yes. The framework meticulously illustrates this by mapping practices to objectives and objectives to goals, providing a clear line of sight from a specific technical action to a high-level strategic outcome, which is invaluable for planning. So these 4 goals, anticipate, withstand, recover, and evolve, form the core definition of cyber resiliency. The document emphasizes that all 4 must be addressed simultaneously. Why is that crucial? Why can't we simply move through them linearly, one after the other?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it reflects the harsh reality of advanced cyber threats. It's not a linear process of attack, recover, then prepare for the next one.
Not sequential.
No, it's a continuous dynamic cycle, much like a living organism adapting to its environment. You can't just recover from an attack and then passively wait for the next one. You must simultaneously be anticipating future attacks, even as you're recovering from a current one.
Doing multiple things at once.
Right. Similarly, systems are constantly evolving due to environmental changes, new technologies, new adversary tactics, new mission requirements. So resilience must be built into that evolution, not just retroactively applied.
Building resilience into change itself.
Exactly. It's a continuous cycle, not a linear progression. For example, while you're diligently recovering compromised data, your intelligence team should concurrently be analyzing the adversary's methods to anticipate their next move and adapt your defenses, closing that window for future attacks.
Okay, constant vigilance and action. Let's unpack. Anticipate. What does it mean for an organization to maintain informed preparedness in the cyber realm?
To anticipate is to proactively forestall compromises of mission or business functions from adversary attacks. It's fundamentally about being proactive and prepared rather than just reactive.
Proactive, not reactive.
This involves 3 key objectives that work in concert. First, to predict.
Predict, like fortune telling.
Not quite. This requires robust organizational capabilities to obtain and analyze threat intelligence, continuously monitoring the environment for subtle adversary activity, and detecting anomalies that might signal an impending attack.
Intelligence and monitoring.
Right. This isn't just collecting raw data, it's about making strategic sense of it. This is where sophisticated threat modeling, based on a deep understanding of adversary characteristics, and consequence modeling, understanding the potential impact of various attack scenarios, become invaluable tools.
Modeling threats and impacts.
Think of it as developing a highly accurate real-time weather forecast for cyber threats, enabling informed decision-making. Second, to prevent.
Okay, prevention. That sounds like standard security.
It includes that, yes.
Yes.
Implementing sound basic security hygiene and hardening systems to reduce the attack surface, minimizing opportunities for an adversary. But it also includes more advanced proactive strategies, changing system components or even mission processes to make the attack surface harder for adversaries to understand or predict, effectively countering their anticipated future moves before they launch.
Making it harder for them proactively.
Exactly. And third, to prepare. This involves developing realistic cyber courses of action, CCOAs, pre-planned, detailed responses to different attack scenarios.
Playbooks.
Essentially. And positioning the necessary resources, both cyber and non-cyber personnel, to execute them swiftly and effectively. This also crucially includes rigorous exercises and training to ensure that when an attack happens, your team can execute the planned responses smoothly and efficiently, building essential muscle memory before the crisis hits.
Practice makes perfect, or at least better.
You got it.
Next, withstand. This sounds like the ultimate test continuing operations despite being under active fire. What does that truly entail for systems and missions?
That's precisely it. To withstand is to continue essential mission or business functions even during a successful attack. The core assumption here, a challenging but necessary one, is that operations must continue even if in a degraded mode until full recovery is possible.
Operate through the pain.
Kind of, yes. It's about maintaining minimal essential capabilities while continuously monitoring the effectiveness of your chosen cyber course of action, CCOA, and dynamically adapting if the adversary shifts tactics. It's not about stopping the attack entirely, but ensuring the mission doesn't collapse. This goal involves 2 critical objectives. The first is to fight through an attack or maintain essential functionality. This means your systems and processes are designed to degrade gracefully rather than fail catastrophically.
Degrade gracefully.
Right. If a critical resource becomes unavailable, there are alternative paths or redundant systems that can take over, even if at reduced capacity. The mission environment must be continuously monitored to assess the effectiveness of the response and detect changes in adversary tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPs, in real time.
Watching the attacker's moves.
This dynamic monitoring helps you pivot your defenses as the adversary adapts. The second objective is to contain or defeat adversary actions.
Limit the damage.
Exactly. While you're fighting through, your cyber defenders are actively working to limit the spread and impact of the attack. This allows them to focus their efforts on a limited set of compromised cyber resources, preventing the contamination from spreading to other vital systems, and crucially, laying the groundwork for eventual recovery.
Like closing fire doors.
It's about building internal firewalls or logical compartments within the system to prevent a localized breach from escalating into a total compromise of the entire environment.
Okay. Once the attack is contained, the focus shifts to recover.
Hmm.
What are the objectives here, and what makes this recovery phase distinct from simply rebooting a system?
To recover is to restore mission or business functions to the maximum extent possible subsequent to a successful attack. This isn't just about getting technical systems back online. It's about restoring the functionality needed for the mission to operate effectively.
Restoring function, not just systems.
Exactly. This involves 3 objectives, each crucial for a complete restoration. First, to determine damages. This is the forensic analysis phase.
Like investigation.
Right. It involves meticulously analyzing the malware used, examining system logs to identify all affected resources, and coordinating with external organizations or law enforcement if needed. It also means actively looking for any stolen or exfiltrated data. This comprehensive assessment is vital.
Finding out what really happened.
Yes. Second, to restore capabilities. This can involve backward recovery, rolling back to a known good, clean state.
Using backups?
Could be, yes. Restoring from a clean backup, potentially losing some recent data, but ensuring integrity. Alternatively, it can involve recreating capabilities by establishing a completely new baseline, effectively rebuilding from scratch.
Rebuild versus restore.
The choice depends heavily on the severity, criticality, and operational needs. And third, to determine reliability.
How trustworthy is the recovered system?
Exactly. After restoration, it's absolutely crucial to assess the degree of confidence you can place in the restored cyber resources. This includes verifying information correctness, ensuring communication availability and integrity, and providing assurance that processes will complete as expected.
Making sure it's really fixed.
The document points out that the reliance users can place on restored resources might differ from pre-attack levels, emphasizing the importance of transparency and careful validation. You need to know if the recovered system is truly trustworthy for critical operations.
Okay. Finally, we have evolve. This isn't just about recovering, it's about fundamentally changing, so you're better prepared next time, almost like an organism adapting to a new environment. What does this long-term adaptation entail?
Precisely. To evolve is to fundamentally change missions or business functions and/or their supporting cyber capabilities to minimize future adverse impacts. This is the continuous improvement loop that closes the cycle, driven by environmental changes in threats, systems, or technology.
Learning and improving for the long haul.
Yes. This goal is achieved through 2 complementary objectives. First, to transform existing processes and behavior.
Changing how people work.
Can be. This means altering aspects of organizational behavior in response to past, current, or predicted attacks. It might involve changing how a mission function is performed or even its scope to reduce exposure and vulnerability to known adversary tactics. It's about adapting your human processes, policies, organizational culture.
Institutionalizing the lessons learned.
Right. Second, to re-architect. This involves modifying existing system architectures or designing new ones to apply cyber resiliency practices more effectively.
Changing the blueprint.
Yes. Redesigning, re-implementing, or replacing cyber resources entirely to address predicted long-term changes in adversary capabilities and to incorporate emerging technologies in a way that improves, or at least does not degrade, cyber resiliency. This iterative process ensures defenses are proactively adaptive. It's about building a better system, not just fixing a broken one.
So those 4 high-level goals, anticipate, withstand, recover, evolve, are supported by 8 specific objectives. The document uses figure 4 to show this detailed relationship. What's the biggest takeaway from understanding these objectives in detail?
The key insight here is that these objectives provide a conceptual foundation for monitoring effectiveness. Because the cyber threat is constantly changing new vulnerabilities, new tactics actions to improve resilience are only effective for a limited time.
So you have to keep checking.
Exactly. Continuous monitoring against these objectives is vital to ensure your efforts remain relevant and impactful. They represent the measurable outcomes you strive for to achieve your overarching goals, moving from understanding your environment to actively preventing, then responding, and finally adapting for the future.
The milestones.
They provide the intermediate milestones on the path to full cyber resiliency.
Can you quickly walk us through each of these 8 objectives, giving us a sense of what practical actions they point to?
Certainly. Understand is about maintaining useful representations of adversaries, mission dependencies, and resource status. Support's anticipating and recovering. It's knowing your battlefield.
Understand.
Prepare is about developing and maintaining realistic cyber courses of action for predicted attacks, considering resources. It's rehearsing responses.
Prepare. Got it.
Prevent focuses on precluding successful attacks through IS, hardening, deflecting, or limiting incentive. Your proactive defense.
Prevent. Makes sense.
Continue aims to maximize duration and viability of essential functions during an attack through degradation, expanding adversary surface, or alternate actions. Fighting through.
Yeah, right.
Constrain is about limiting damage by isolating compromised resources, drawing on fault tolerance, containing the fire.
Constraint.
Reconstitute means redeploying resources to provide full mission functionality after attack, ensuring quick return to known good state. Getting back up.
Or reconstitute.
Transform means changing organizational behavior in response to attacks, minimizing exposure by altering mission activities or processes, adjusting human processes.
More?
And finally, re-architect involves modifying system architectures to apply practices more effectively, address long-term threats, incorporate new tech without degrading resilience. Continuous technical improvement.
Re-architect. Okay, those 8 objectives give a clearer picture. This is where the rubber truly meets the road. The specific practices. The document lists 14 of them and notes they're extensible. What's the foundational assumption for these practices to work effectively?
The practices are predicated on the assumption that sound security engineering, those IC principles we discussed, is already in place, and that mission criticality analyses have been thoroughly performed.
Security basics first. Know what's important.
Exactly. If those assumptions don't hold, if basic security hygiene isn't met or you don't know your critical assets, then a cyber resiliency assessment would first identify those gaps because the practices would be built on a weak foundation.
Gotta have the foundation.
These practices are truly the how-to guide for building advanced resilience on top of a solid security posture. They are the tactical actions that implement the strategic objectives and goals. Now, while the document lists 14, let's focus on a few compelling examples that really highlight the unique thinking of cyber resiliency, particularly those that might be less intuitive than typical security measures.
Okay, let's hear some examples.
We can group them by their primary effect during an attack campaign. Let's start with practices primarily focused on proactive defense and confusion, aiming to disrupt the adversary's planning and execution before or during an initial breach.
Proactive confusion. I like it.
First, deception. This is a fascinating practice. It involves using obfuscation and misdirection to confuse an adversary.
Messing with their heads.
Pretty much. The insight here is that you're not just blocking them, you're actively trying to manipulate their perception of your system. This can make them uncertain, delay their attack, increase the risk of discovery, or even expose their tradecraft.
How does that work?
It can be dissimulation, hiding the real, like using advanced encryption or masking critical system configurations, or simulations showing the false, like setting up honeypots, decoy systems designed to attract and trap attackers, or fabricating enticing but false data to lead them astray.
Honeypots and fake data.
Okay. It's a psychological game aimed at frustrating and revealing the attacker's intentions and capabilities. Another crucial proactive practice is unpredictability.
Keep them guessing.
Right. This means making frequent, random changes, not just in response to attacks, but proactively and continuously. The core idea is to keep the adversary off balance. This makes it significantly harder for adversaries to predict your system's behavior and drastically increases their chance of being detected, as their carefully planned attack steps might suddenly fail.
Random changes.
It often leverages other practices like diversity, non-persistence, and dynamic positioning to change the playing field constantly, making reconnaissance and long-term planning much harder for the attacker.
Okay. Now let's consider practices focused on maintaining operations and limiting damage during an active attack.
One of the most powerful practices, especially against persistent threats, is non-persistence. The true insight here is that you're not just trying to block attacks, you're fundamentally shortening the window an attacker has to live within your system.
Reducing their dwell time.
Exactly. This practice means retaining information, services, and connectivity for only a limited time to reduce an adversary's opportunity to establish a persistent foothold. It involves quickly refreshing systems to known trusted states and eliminating unneeded services or information.
Wiping the slate clean often.
Yes. If a system is frequently wiped clean and rebuilt from a trusted image, sometimes multiple times a day, any malware injected has a very short window to operate before it's erased. Virtualization technologies make this much easier and faster to implement, enabling rapid reimaging of virtual machines.
Ah, virtualization helps there.
Definitely. Another vital practice for fighting through is segmentation. This involves logically or physically separating components based on their pedigree or criticality to limit damage spread.
Compartmentalization.
Right. The insight here is that even if one part of your system is compromised, the damage is contained and doesn't spread throughout the entire network, much like watertight compartments on a ship. This reduces the attack surface and allows for more cost-effective placement of defenses, as you can focus the strongest protections on the most critical segments.
Focus protection where it matters most.
It can apply at network, system, application, or even data layers. Finally, for recovery and continuous adaptation, substantiated integrity is critical here.
Substantiated integrity. What's that?
This means continuously ascertaining that critical services, information, and components haven't been corrupted or tampered with. This goes beyond simple backups. It involves using robust integrity checks, such as cryptographic seals and hashes, rigorous data validation, and even polling diverse independent sources, sometimes using complex mechanisms like Byzantine quorum systems.
Byzantine quorum systems. Okay, that sounds advanced.
It is. It's a method for achieving consensus, even when some components are unreliable or malicious, to verify correctness. The insight is that you need an unshakable confidence in the integrity of your data and systems, especially after an attack, to truly trust your recovery efforts. It's about knowing with certainty that what you think is true actually is true.
Verifying truth? That's a big one. That's a lot of tools in the toolbox, and those examples really illuminate the thinking behind them. The document also touches on how these practices map to objectives and depend on each other. It's a complex, interconnected web, isn't it?
Indeed. Tables 3 and 4 in the document are excellent illustrations of these intricate relationships, showing how specific practices contribute to multiple objectives, and crucially, how they rely on other practices to be effective.
Examples.
For example, adaptive response, where systems dynamically reconfigure to counter an attack, relies heavily on analytic monitoring to know what's happening, coordinated defense to ensure actions don't interfere, and redundancy to have alternative resources available.
They need each other.
Exactly. It truly highlights how a robust cyber resiliency posture requires integrated planning and execution across multiple domains, where all the components work together in harmony, not in isolation.
And how do these practices apply in real-world scenarios, from the high-level systems engineering down to daily operations?
Table 5 breaks this down, showing how these practices translate into actionable guidance across different roles and phases. For systems engineering, it's about designing systems from the ground up for dynamic reconfiguration, defining clear interfaces, ensuring modularity so components can be swapped or isolated during an attack. They're building the capabilities.
Designing for resilience.
For architecture, it means specifying standards, criteria, and trade-off guidance for how these practices should be implemented across architectural elements. They provide the blueprint and the rules.
The big plan.
And for operations, it's about defining cyber courses of action and mission courses of action that actively leverage these practices on a daily basis, and what should be considered in exercises and training to ensure operational readiness.
Making it real day to day.
It's about making these concepts actionable at every stage, from the drawing board to the live operational environment.
We talked about the cyber kill chain earlier, but the framework dives even deeper into the sophistication of the adversary. What kind of threats is cyber resiliency engineering specifically designed to counter, and what makes these adversaries so uniquely challenging?
This framework makes a very clear and demanding assumption. It's designed to counter an adversary at or above cyber prep level 4.
Level 4. What does that mean?
As Table 6 meticulously details, these are adversaries characterized by significant to very sophisticated expertise, ample resources, and often state-sponsored backing.
The big guns.
Exactly. They are not opportunistic script kiddies. They can generate their own opportunities for continuous coordinated attacks, and they explicitly seek to undermine or even destroy missions, often by exploiting a persistent presence they've established within a system.
Persistent and destructive.
Right. A critical challenge these adversaries pose is their high concern with minimizing detection of their tradecraft, especially when preparing for future attacks, meaning they are exceptionally stealthy and patient.
So we're explicitly talking about nation-state level actors or highly organized, well-resourced groups with long-term strategic objectives, not just criminals looking for a quick payout.
Precisely. We're discussing adversaries with deep pockets, advanced tool sets, and a strategic intent that extends beyond simple data theft to encompass intellectual property, critical infrastructure control, or disrupting national functions over extended periods.
Wow.
A truly insightful point the framework makes is this. At these sophisticated levels, adversaries themselves are likely applying cyber resiliency practices to their own command and control structures and operational methodologies.
They're using resilience too,
Against
us.
It's highly likely. This raises an important question. If they are building resilience into their attack campaigns, then our defenses and our own resilience must be even more robust and adaptive to counter them effectively. It becomes a continuous, escalating arms race of resilience.
An arms race of resilience. That's a thought.
Table 7 then clearly maps how each of the cyber resiliency goals, anticipate, withstand, recover, evolve, directly addresses specific adversary activities within their overall campaign, showing how the goals are specifically tailored to counter these advanced threats at every stage.
So we've thoroughly covered the what, goals, objectives, practices, the how engineering principles, and the who, the sophisticated adversary. Now, a critical question for implementation.
Yeah.
Where do we apply all of this? What are the specific domains or layers for cyber resiliency?
The document outlines a notional layered architecture, providing a roadmap for where these practices can be applied, ranging from the very broad to the very specific. It starts at the highest level with the organization or enterprise itself, including its governance structures and strategic processes.
Top level.
Then it drills down to the mission or line of business, which can even be cross-organizational, encompassing major functions like national defense or large-scale financial operations that span multiple departments.
These assumptions.
Below that is the mission business process or task, focusing on specific workflows or activities that comprise a mission.
So it really drills down from the strategic to the tactical, providing granular points of intervention.
Exactly. And most specifically, the framework targets cyber resources themselves. This is where the core engineering and application of practices primarily occur.
The tech stuff.
Largely, yes. These resources include a wide range of elements: mission business segments, collections of resources supporting a mission, systems of systems, complex integrations, networks, shared services like cloud platforms, individual systems, information assets, software and data, nodes, hardware and communication media.
A lot of different resources.
But beyond the purely technical, it also explicitly includes personnel, organizational processes, and even facilities.
People and processes, too.
Yes. Cyber resiliency engineering primarily focuses on applying practices to these cyber resources, understanding that certain practices, like privilege restriction, can become incredibly complex when applied across multiple organizations due to differing policies and trust boundaries. It's about ensuring resilience is built into the very fabric of the digital components that enable your mission, recognizing even non-technical elements play a role.
Okay. Finally, as with any major engineering undertaking, it all comes back to cost. The document identifies three multifaceted types of cost associated with cyber resiliency. This raises an important question for any organization. How do decision makers truly assess the investment in cyber resiliency beyond a simple budget line item?
The framework emphasizes that cost isn't just about dollars and cents in the budget. It's a far more comprehensive picture.
More than just the price tag.
Right. It breaks down the investment into three broad categories to ensure decision makers understand the full impact, which often extend beyond direct financial outlay. First, initial costs.
Upfront costs.
Yes. The expenses for developing, acquiring, installing, integrating the techniques or technologies. Think capital expenditure. Buying hardware, software licenses, initial design, implementation services, typically one-time or project-based costs.
Yeah.
Second, support costs. S. These are the ongoing costs required to maintain and facilitate the effective use of the resilience approach over time.
Keeping it running.
Exactly. Operational expenditure like continuous CompTIA development, how you plan to use these systems, refining policies, regular testing, exercises, ongoing risk assessments, continuous training for staff. It's the cost of keeping resilience current, effective, and adapted.
Adapting to change costs money too.
Absolutely. And third, consequential costs and benefits. C. This is where it gets particularly nuanced, as these are the positive or negative consequences of using a particular approach that aren't direct expenses.
The side effects, good or bad?
Kind of.
Mhm.
On the cost side, it could be reduced mission effectiveness due to added complexity or slower performance, an increased hardware-software footprint, or technical limitations on future decisions. Opportunity cost.
Like making things slower.
Could be. A very restrictive measure might slow down critical operations, impacting mission performance in ways that are hard to quantify but very real. On the benefit side, it could be improved mission performance due to fewer disruptions, enhanced usability, reliability, or reduced programmatic risk, less schedule delay, fewer technical issues later.
Hidden benefits.
Right. These can be quantitative, qualitative, or semi-quantitative, requiring careful consideration beyond simple financial figures.
So this comprehensive view helps decision makers truly understand the full long-term impact of their cyber resiliency investments beyond just the initial sticker price.
Absolutely. By looking at all three types of cost, organizations can make far more informed trade-offs, balancing the desired level of resilience against the full spectrum of resources available and the potential impacts on their operations.
It's a better trade-off.
It ensures that cyber resiliency is viewed as a critical strategic investment in mission continuity and long-term organizational health, not just another line item in the IT budget. This holistic cost analysis is crucial for making truly intelligent decisions.
So what does all of this mean for you, our curious listener? This deep dive into Maitree's cyber resiliency engineering framework offers a powerful shortcut to being truly well-informed about a critical, evolving discipline. We've unpacked how cyber resiliency is not just about avoiding attacks, but about the fundamental engineered ability to anticipate, withstand, recover, and evolve in the face of sophisticated and persistent threats. It's a design capability built upon solid security principles and deeply integrated into the overarching goal of mission assurance.
We've seen how specific practices like deception, non-persistence, and substantiated integrity are not just abstract concepts, but actionable strategies that fundamentally shift the paradigm from pure prevention to continuous operation despite compromise.
Fighting through.
Exactly. This framework provides a living, evolving blueprint for protecting vital functions in an increasingly complex and contested cyberspace. It encourages critical thinking about how all the pieces from technical controls to organizational processes and even human behavior fit together to create true resilience, recognizing that perfect prevention is often unattainable against a determined adversary.
Here's a final thought for you to mull over. The framework emphasizes that even as you are recovering from an attack, you must already be anticipating the next. It's a continuous adaptive battle, a dynamic cycle, not a one-time fix.
That constant cycle.
Yeah. For you, the learner, the provocative thought here is, how might your own systems, whether personal or professional, be designed or adapted to embody this constant cycle of anticipation, withstand, recovery, and evolution, rather than just reacting to individual incidents? What does true engineered resilience look like in your daily digital life, and how can you proactively build it into your own world? Something to consider until our next deep dive.